Okay, so here we are in turn 53, 1750. Few kings. No one died, but we had a crisis of madness. I think, yes, that was the exciting thing. Yeah, a couple of kings got reduced by scandal, which reduces their diplomacy by 3. One of them was England. England had $50 on hand to pay that off, so they're fine. The other one was Turkey, who obviously did not. So they suffered a bankruptcy. Now, I think that you're only allowed one bankruptcy per turn. So the Turks are going to have to pay their $150 or whatever to Russia and to Spain. But if they can't afford it, they're not going to suffer a second bankruptcy. They lost, a bunch of manufacturing, some shipping. They're really beginning to collapse here in this situation. They also lost 15 victory points for that. France got an agricultural crisis, which never is good, but it doesn't really hurt them too much. It does kind of spark that, hey, this might be the turn to hit them. But they're still pretty good shape, and they've got tons and tons of money. I don't think it's going to affect them at all. They carried over $500 from last turn. This is going to hurt them by about $150 in their production, so it's really not a big deal. Although for other countries, this could be devastating. France's economy is in such a strong situation and condition that they don't have to worry about that. Interesting events. We got a revolt over here in Sicily. The Spanish reconquest of Sicily has not taken well somehow. We got some Bantu raids again coming in. They're going to try to burn the English thing, which is a real problem. The English are going to probably have to build themselves another army and try to send that there. They've just finally gotten a leader to try to suppress those revolts in Wolf, and more problems crop up. But now the most interesting is the division of Poland, the first division of Poland. Because the Confederation of the Bar is up, there's going to be a Polish defense here. Now, unfortunately, the Poles aren't very competent, and we have a very mighty Prussia who's completely interested in joining in on this war and cutting Poland up. And Austria and Russia are kind of along the lines of, hey, yeah, we'll go along with it, because they figure they probably can win just on the strength of the Prussian army. It's so much better than the Polish army. Their own armies are probably enough to handle Poland too. What we're going to see is if there's a victory there. I have to find where I've got this. This is going to be the provinces. Well, Prussia just gets West Prussia out of this. But they're automatically going in, and the French have kind of the option to join in, but no real purpose to it. And Austria is only going to get Krakow out of it, over there. But Russia has the options, will gain Polotsk over here, Byelorussia here, Ukraine, Donetsk, and Sueria. Ukraine, Donetsk is Turkish. Ukraine, Donetsk. What was it? Sueria. Okay. So here's the problem. Kharkov is not included in this. They're assumed to have already taken this at some earlier point. They didn't get it. So this is where we start seeing the fragmentation of Polish territories that are left behind in these divisions just because the game doesn't handle things right. The Donetsk situation allows Russia to declare war with a free casus belli on Turkey, which I believe they will take. And they have to actually conquer it in that case. But that's kind of a problem. These have to get out of there. That's kind of a problem for both Russia and for the Turks, because there's Poland in the way. Of course, you can walk through Poland at this point. But I think the Russians do want to fight that war. Turkey's in so much trouble right now. They're not going to have any money, and they're stuck in another war. They don't have a way to back down or anything like that. So it starts causing more problems. Will somebody else be called in? Will they call Spain in on this or something? It could happen. They could make an alliance again with Spain and drag them in, because Spain's still interested in getting their islands back, And hey, what the hell? If you can, keep pounding on the Turks to get your territory, it might as well happen. Nothing too exciting with the diplomacy. Austria, Russia, Prussia all declare war on Poland. Their goal here is a little different than a normal war. They don't have to win the war per se. They would if there was a controller, but my reading of the Risto event is they have to capture Warsaw. If they capture Warsaw without being forced, say, to request a peace or something, then they get the benefits of this. Poor England is stuck, or no, poor Spain is stuck running the polls for this. Because they have a positive stability, they can't afford to just pass on it. Because essentially, well, it's a free pass for Russia. Well, Russia doesn't get called. For Turkey, the only other person who could get called is England. And if England chooses not to run them, well, not only did the Spanish lose another point of stability, but they also lose some victory points. So it's usually not a good idea to refuse these. The French, however, did a major offensive in terms of the diplomatic statuses, and they're collecting these up. Wow. What did they pick up this time? Ohio, the papacy, and Switzerland. They also competed on the Palatinate, and they took Ohio from the English. The English just had them in royal marriage. They took the Palatinate. The Spanish also competed for that, but a little less effectively. It didn't really go deep into the French territory. But that's 3 victory points. It's also this collection of powers that the next war, they can call on all these different powers. Now, some of them aren't too impressive. Things like the papacy, he's got that for the next Holy Roman Empire election. So he can bribe, so he doesn't have to pay to get the support of the bishops. If somebody else pays, he might lose them, but he gets them automatically with the papacy, or he gets a bonus on his roll with the papacy. He doesn't have to pay as much. Things like Portugal, Scotland, Holland, big navies, Sweden, Denmark threaten the English position. The English are scared shitless of facing a French combination here. The French no longer have all the admirals they used to have. In fact, I may be missing some off the board. But they definitely have a powerful coalition of countries that they can throw navies again and again against the English until maybe they get lucky and win a battle. And then, we got the Prussians, who aren't too likely to stay there, but the Swiss, powerful force, sitting there next to the Habsburgs as a threat against them. It's very difficult to see a way in which the French can be brought down at this point militarily. Anyway, I guess we did the admin. Oops. Forgot about the Free Russian Casus Belli against the Turks, which they're taking, but they didn't try to create an alliance with Austria or Spain. No real problem with either. It's just they think they've got a shot of just marching down and grabbing, 3 provinces on their own, maybe. So why feel too badly about this? Or at least getting the majority of the points. They're wrong, though. And yes, they should call the Spanish in. I don't think they want to call the Habsburgs in on this. But yeah, we're gonna bring the Spanish into this as well. The Spanish actually have to pay a declaration of war, but the way I'm looking at it is their higher stability will actually make it more likely for the Russians to get territory, even if they're giving some of that territory to the Spaniards. So we'll take it to there, and this should not be here. It's gonna make its way back. Alright, economic actions have been taken. The poor Turks have no money because they went bankrupt trying to pay off the war reparations, and now they're facing a war and really don't have anything they can do about it. They're in a lot of trouble here, but because they have no money, because they were at negative money, anything they could do to add to their money, taking out a loan, adding the Smyrna fleet and allocating it, these things just didn't make sense. Now, Not allocating the Smyrna fleet puts them in a war course with France, and that gives France a casus belli against them. I don't know if they're going to take it, but it's certainly some cheap points you could get by making this sort of crusade against the poor Turks. And, well, it might be worth it. Danger is that could always instigate the big war that France is trying to avoid, even though they don't really mind it, just because they'd rather not be hassled with it. Over here, the only real war we see other than the Russian, Turkish, and the Spanish are involved in it, war, is this Polish, Prussian, Austrian, Russian mess. The Prussians are in place to really take Berlin Warsaw right away. So the Poles took a defensive action, and all they got was a fortification out of it. They've got so many penalties against them. Over here we see I've updated the technology chart. The Warren Lace is moving closer and closer to the French. Most people aren't really chasing it. It's not that big an advantage. It moves you from the C table to the B table is the big thing. That doesn't necessarily mean much. And we saw with good leadership, it means you can wreck the guy, you can destroy the other guy's army. But with questionable leadership, it may not be that big an advantage at all. I'm not convinced it's worth the payoff. Of course, the English pushed their way across the triple deckers, and this actually should drop down now. The English had to build up a bigger army to try and deal with the Bantus over there while they're still dealing with this. They've got a lot of problems on their hands. They're hoping to fix that. Meanwhile, the French are expanding everywhere in India, just increasing their holdings. The English increased their slave trade. We're kind of getting to the point where already the French and Spanish have kind of agreed, okay, the French will take 1 slave, the Spanish will take 4, that way they can get away. And slaves are kind of expensive, that way they can get away at an $8 slave. But if these unrests clear up, the English are going to have more things that they'd like to feed the slave trade with. The French already have more than they can feed. They don't really see the desire to compete with the English there because it's an even odds shot, and there's a good chance they'll lose ground and not get money off their slaves. So going for the cotton seems the safer choice. Let the English have their money. That's fine. The English certainly are not going to back down there. We saw the English attempt a colonization down here in Portugal, or in Brazil, Portuguese territory. That's a known area, and they said, I could get maybe capitalize on that, because they did increase their slave holdings a bit. And as they increase their holdings in terms of territories that they can bring under cultivation, well, they can get in this bidding war too and get their own share of the trade. And that kind of throws a monkey wrench into everyone else. And we may start seeing the price that slaves are going for going up. We might see people offering a little bit of a bonus and buying slaves directly from other players, which usually you don't see early in the game, but as things kind of fill out, it becomes more and more desirable. Spain, of course, always has the option to grant asiento to somebody. The problem is, people who could really give it want those slaves, but someone like Russia isn't producing enough, and that's really all we got left. Okay, on to the military. I guess we're ready. Okay, first round's pretty much up. I half awake and I forgot to deal with that rush, and I kind of wanted to send a ship over to pick him up if I've got someone who can. I do not. Benbow can't go to the rest of the world. So he's kind of pointless there. As far as I can see, I wanted to discover new areas. Anyway, French went and discovered Senegal, though, and they're planning on expanding their trading posts there. They're running out of trading posts, or they're out of them actually. And I guess I can do it in 2 turns in the new period. Elsewhere, what happened? The English landed an army down here to attack these Bantus, and they pretty much had their army destroyed. I think that means the Bantus get a chance to attack the English trading post there, and that's going to open up, if it gets destroyed, a new trading post. I forgot to roll that as well. But Wolf is doing a decent job here. The piracy looks like it's got a good chance of cracking. Over here, Russians have to make their way. They have to establish a supply source because they're actually at war with Poland. They can't go through the Crimea, so they have to actually take Krakow. The Austrians are moving up. They figure, hey, you know, I'll get a few victory points off of this war, even though there's no surrender to it. That sounds exciting. But the Prussians, under French, started thinking to themselves, hey, you know, I'm not sure I want to end this thing. I think I want to keep fighting it and make Russia and Austria keep paying to fight a war. Neither one of them is going to win the game. And if I can tie them down in a lengthy war against Poland, that's to the best. And, you know, if they settle it, that's fine. But I'm going to grab as many points as I can for controlling Prussia as a minor during this period. It's not going to really help me otherwise. It's kind of an interesting idea. And I don't think it's that bad. So anyway, I didn't march in and face the Polish army, which gathered here. And instead I'm starting to just grab territory. You know, I forgot how I interpret these. First of all, the natives don't attack until the end of the turn. So the English had another shot to attack. And because they did, they were able... it's pretty likely to destroy a native army at this point. The fire combat is on the A table. It's going to have a good chance of getting a star on them. These are considered absolute militia, so they only take 1 star to break. So the lucky thing for the English was that they still had anything left to fire back again. They took like 20 losses in the first attack. Clearing things up here. And not much more changing. You know, those sieges are underway. I just wanted to talk about that. Probably not a lot of talking on this one. After pushing through a couple of rounds with Poland, you know, just being kind of dismembered, but the Austrians can't just punch through and fight. They want to go through Podasia. One of those things I can't pronounce, I guess. And the Prussians not really willing to do the fighting for anyone else. Willing to see, hey, you know, yes, I'd like to pick up the points, but, you know, let's see if we can hurt somebody first and strip them down. And also, so they're kind of closing around and just surrounding it. Now people can go through it because they're all... It's hard to tell what's going on. Anyway, much more interesting. The war against the Turks, the Russians, smashed into that Turkish army. Now this was not an unfair fight. The Russian army is not tremendously large. It was bigger than the Turkish force. They had a slightly better leader in terms of, and you can see Saltykov is off here, but not tremendously better. But they managed to destroy the Turkish army. Again, that's not a terribly unlikely effect in this later period of the game. Small armies faced by larger armies are in a lot of trouble at this moment. Just because, especially, well, no, because they're using the C table, so it's not that dangerous to the size. So anyway, the Russians apparently got kind of lucky there. And I think they were actually demoralized as well as the Turks. But they ended up wiping it out and killing the Turkish Sultan. That means, for one thing, it would have meant a -2 stability for the Turks, which it didn't because they were already at the bottom. But it also meant that they had to roll up a new leader. Now, they rolled up one who's not as good as the last one. The last one was 799. This one's 747. But he's still good enough to avoid the Turkish penalties. So things look pretty decent at this point. And in fact, he doesn't add additional penalties because his administration isn't an 8 or higher, which is kind of the risky kind of guys. Anyway, we're still going. We're here at what, 6th? We're starting the 6th round here. Spanish haven't been getting a lot of momentum moving here. They've got their army sieging Sardinia, but they're still dealing with this revolt in Sicily. And, well, over here, they've decided to lay a marker down in Senegal. They discovered it as well, and are going to try to improve their slave production, because they really do need more slaves. But so do the French, so will the English. It's going to be a real competition at some point. The English are having real troubles here, even with Wolfe. They're just not getting the rolls. The pirates are cleared up, at least, for now. Okay, well, that's the end of the phase there. We just had one more round. And I'm coming to the decision here. None of this is clear, but this is a war. The Austrians are succeeding in gaining things, conceivably, and maybe they're not willing to at this point because of Krakow, but conceivably people can make pieces. And the Austrians have gotten more out of this than they would otherwise. And they could always declare another war to grab more of Poland. So it's kind of an appealing prospect to try to make peace with Poland. Likewise, of course, the Prussians, I see no reason they can't, except it's the minor versus minor thing. If the French were involved, it would be trivial to do this, but I'm not sure it should be disallowed to try to make a peace this way. And this is one of the places where the game doesn't really handle things well, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of defining, the rules well. But to me, it seems like a reasonable thought that, hey, you should be able to levy your peace. And a peace giving these two to Austria at this point might actually be more appealing than trying to fight this out in the hopes of getting Krakow someday. So we'll see. And as we push into, the 1755 turn here, we see a couple of markers I've got down there for France. They're going to lose their king this turn, so there's going to be a new election for the empire. As well, we're also going to see Lorraine getting absorbed into France at this point. Some new leaders, lots of new leaders. We've got like Amherst, who's taken control in North America, which makes us kind of want to build another North American army to let Wolfe continue with the anti-revolt operations. Another option, of course, is to send Wolfe with an army off to handle this set. They're outranked, though, still. We've got Brunswick on the board now, who's our highest ranked leader. We lost one of our A leaders, so we actually have an extra army. We could commit more to the North American frontier. On the other hand, here we have Montcalm in charge, but he doesn't last very long. I think they've got his, I don't know. It feels kind of funny when somebody is not there for long, but Montcalm was only really active in North America, and he came at an old age, so it may be suitable. We also got, what do we have here? Busey, who's going to be helping establish, a military presence in Asia of one sort or another. I don't know how to use him. He's not a conquistador, so he's not really as useful. He can't help found colonies and the like, but he can lead troops. Okay, peace-wise, well, by my interpretation or misinterpretation of the rules, however you want to look at it, Prussia was able to get a peace with Poland. Austria was not. Prussia managed to get West Prussia and Posen, which is more than they would get from the normal operation. Of course, Posen is something they're going, in one of the later divisions they end up getting. But right now, that's what's available. They were able to get this from the peace. Austria would have gladly taken their two provinces, but they were unable to get it. And now they've got kind of a problem. If they take Warsaw, they give Russia more than they're going to get. So they'd kind of like to win this war right out, which means Russia's got kind of a problem, because Warsaw's a long way from Russia, and they're the ones with the most to gain here. Russia's also at war with Turkey still. The peace, because of Spain's high stability comparatively, would be a piece of level 5. That's an unconditional surrender. And Turkey certainly couldn't afford the reparations for that. So kind of the offer was, okay, well, you're allowed to give us provinces if we ask for them. Since Spain gets the majority of the stuff, you give me Donetsk, and you give Spain Sardinia and Messina. And Turkey's like, well, no, I'm going to lose this anyway if I lose a piece of level 5. And that's kind of the worst case scenario for me. I'm not surrendering now. Now, next turn they may be forced to. This turn they had no cash, so they were stuck at the bottom. So they've got that big minus on them. So does Russia, but Russia can take 3 turns of it, I believe. I'm not sure after Peter. They may only be able to last 2 turns in that, in which case we may be hitting a period where both sides have to accept their peace. Anyway, that's where we are, and we're moving into the new turn. This is the last turn of the period. It's time to pad your points, but, well, for people in wars, it's kind of tough, to move that way. And for the other players, well, they've been padding them all along as much as they can. You can see the French trying to get the most minors thing. It looks like they have that if they don't get a destabilization or something. All right, up this goes.